So hello, everybody, and welcome to our Tinyclues webinar today. My name is Matt Engstrom. I'm Product Marketing Director here at Tinyclues. And today we're going to be talking about why CRM is how marketers win. And there's some specific reasons why this is such an interesting topic right now and something that we're actually looking to cover. We're actually seeing some significant macro trends in the industry that are actually making CRM marketing or customer marketing probably more important to overall marketing strategy than ever before. And we're going to talk a little bit about why that is. Then we're going to talk a little bit about sort of the business challenges specifically this creates and drill down into that. And we're going to talk a little bit about how businesses can look to execute this strategy more effectively to drive value. And then we're actually going to talk about some specific use cases where there were some innovative companies that actually addressed this on their own and were able to drive value through some of the strategies that we'll be talking about today. So I'd like to introduce our two guests. Today we have David Bessis, who is the CEO and founder of Tinyclues. David's been working in the industry and innovating in the CRM space for a while now and has done a ton of thought leadership on the topic. So he brings a deep layer of expertise. And we also have Thomas Husson, who's the VP and Principal Analyst at Forrester and has been talking to a lot of CMOs about this topic and industry trends and helping them with strategy and has been thinking about this as well. So he's going to bring an additional layer of expertise that I think will be really interesting for folks today. So I'm not going to talk too much. I'm going to kick it over actually to Thomas, who's going to run through some quick content for us that he's put together, and then we'll go right into just a discussion between the two of you, if that sounds good. So Tomas, just let's turn it over to you.
Thank you, Matt, and hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. So my name is Thomas. So I'm a VP and Principal Analyst at Forrester, an independent research and consulting firm, and I'm part of the global CMO team. So before we get started, I just want to sort of set the scene very briefly and share with you some content that I've prepared for this webinar, and I just want to basically walk you through some of the key priorities and challenges that I see marketers having based on some recent survey data and trends and interviews. Just before I get started, are you? Can you see my screen? Okay, is everything's fine on your side? Good.
Yep.
So the first thing I want to start with is the fact that 2021 is indeed going to be a challenging year for a good reason, is that many marketers went through 2020 with some budget restrictions because of the crisis. There is more often than not this bad habit of thinking of that, in case of emergency, you need to reduce your marketing budget. I love Tom Fishburne. Is really a nice guy. I met him at a couple of events, and this corridor is really, I think, sort of summarizing some of the bad habits that companies that fly blind have. Like, they think something's going wrong, and they see acquisition costs growing, and they think, okay, let's stop advertising and marketing, and we'll see what happens. Well, that's not the most efficient way of driving marketing these days. I think what's really key is to be more precise, more targeted, so that you acquire only the customers that you can keep. And to your point, Matt, you insisted on the importance of CRM marketing and customer marketing, and I can't agree more. The way to do this is to really leverage data and turn data into insights. That's what we've learned from a quantitative survey that we conducted among almost 2,000 marketing leaders across the globe. And unsurprisingly, what they struggle with is data quality management. And this is going to get worse with consent management and this cookie-less world that we're entering. And that's one of the reasons why increasingly marketers care about first data and want to go directly to consumers. We see many D2C commerce efforts from many brands across different industries. That is key for them. That's one of the key challenges. And as I pointed out, it's to turn data into insights, and even more importantly, to drive decision-making with insights. This is really the key. And if you're more mature, if you have a good data governance model, then yes, you can activate real-time data and you can personalize experiences. This is what, at the end of the day, customers are expecting. But to do this, you've got somehow to move on a step-by-step approach. It's a journey, and you're going to have to move from a traditional cross-channel perspective based on traditional segmentation and campaigns and outbounds to something that is based on moments, that is much more individualized, personalized, real-time, and predictive. And to make that happen, you need a certain level of maturity, but you also need to drive your MarTech investment and assemble the right solutions to be able to activate such a more personalized marketing. And I know in your intro, Matt, you touched on, sort of some of the shifts happening and the fact that marketing is changing. And I agree with that. And at the same time, I think it's all about coming back to marketing's DNA. It starts with customer understanding, and at the heart of it is data. And yes, it's more than ever about delivering the brand promise and about the brand experience. But at some point, it's about CMOs making sure they shift back to what marketing is really about, and the fact that they have to act as the voice of the customer within their organizations, which brings me to the last point I wanted to make in this intro, is to say that being customer obsessed is going to change your entire organization. This is not just about marketing. This is about transforming the entire enterprise and embedding some of the decisions you make in your execution, in your operations. And it takes a while to shift the culture to really be customer-led and insights-driven and being fast and connected. We see only 7% of firms being really customer obsessed. So there is a journey there to really take advantage of this and embrace customer marketing. So I don't want to spend more time sharing data and trends and points, because I just wanted to set the scene here and share Forrester's perspective. And here David reacts on that, because he talks to many CMOs and he implements that with many of your clients. I'm just curious to hear whether these trends resonate or whether you have a different perspective.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. Well, they do resonate. And what I find really striking is it's not just one thing happening. It's like all these things are happening at the same time. Everything was expected to happen. First, for example, when you go digital, a couple of years ago, it was a digital transformation. Now it's a digital reality, and it's a bit different. So everybody knew that people were investing in acquisition, but you make the money out of a retention, not the acquisition. Acquisition per se is not cost effective. So everybody was kind of getting ready for that to happen, but nobody was predicting that the budget would be cut that quickly, and it would supposed to become real that quickly. Now, on top of that, you have the cookie apocalypse and the idea that not only the acquisition cost will go up, but you will become basically data blind in terms of acquisition. So all the attention is like refocusing on the customer data at a moment when there is still a lot of uncertainty on the stack, on the processes, and the organizations have not matured so much. So it's really crunch time. Maybe 2 years ago you could say, okay, I'm going to invest in technology to show results in 2-3 years. Now you cannot wait 2-3 years to show results. So this is an interesting moment, I guess, for many people.
Yeah, I agree. It's about all these things happening simultaneously at the same time. And you've got to deal with like the short-term stuff and still demonstrate ROI and being effective in your campaign. And at the same time, it's about preparing the future and changing your approach and being more customer-centric and transforming the organization. And it's interesting you mentioned that, because one of the key pain points that we hear a lot is about these sort of conflicting priorities, and the fact that, well, I've got to deal with all this day-to-day mess. I've got to, sort of upskill and reskill some of my team so that they're more data-centric, data literate, and more technology matured, and I need more expertise in these new channels. But at the same time, I've got to prepare for the future and to deal with the more long-term stuff and build brand equity, So yeah, I definitely agree. These are challenging times, but I'd argue it's a bit provocative, but I'd say it's time for CMOs to own marketing again.
100% with you. And if you cannot build a new organization to solve all these crazy problems, it means that you will have to find the right balance of build versus buy. You cannot rebuild everything. You have to be pragmatic, and you have to find a good ROI, not just of the money you spend, but of the time you spend on things. And I think this notion of time is becoming really critical. A couple of years ago, you could entertain yourself with the idea that you would build a brand new practice. You cannot really do that, I guess.
Yeah, time is of the essence, and it's the same for consumers, I would say. Either you want to quickly get access to information, or you're a more entertainment way, and you're, ready to spend more time to discover a product or a brand. And that's why this notion of context that I mentioned earlier, moments, I think is so key, because the more you anticipate that context, the more powerful is the message you send across, or it's not even about sending a message. It's about having a dialogue with customers and having this sort of open conversation at the moment when they want to interact with you as a brand.
Great. So I think really interesting discussion sort of around not just the fact that there's these major changes that are happening and sort of a refocus to Thomas, your point around getting back to the heart of marketing and focusing on the customer. And not only that, but all of this is happening at once. I think that's a really good point, David. And I think at Tinyclues, one thing that we're seeing in market is that a lot of our clients and marketers that we talk to, CMOs that we have discussions with, are aware of this, and they're sort of trapped in sort of developing a strategy to be able to address this challenge. And they understand that being customer focused is essential. But what they're also finding is that we're living in the reality where there's, business needs and business pressures as well. Pressures to drive revenue, pressures to sell products. And at times, these goals, the goal of customer centricity and the goal of delivering for your business, can create a gap in terms of strategy, because you need to be reactive sometimes to be able to deliver for your business, which doesn't necessarily mean that you can develop a customer first strategy in the way that you would want. So I think I would like to hear, David, from you first a little bit around kind of thinking about this customer centricity business goal gap. What are some of the things that you've been thinking about in regards to this topic?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. That's, for me, that's the biggest disconnect on the market. For years and years, everybody has been treating MarTech as if it was purely a technology problem. It is a big technology problem, but you have to articulate the tech with business. And when you look at CRM, this is blatant that there is a massive gap. The promise of marketing automation, that was the dream of everybody, like the self-driving car of marketing. You would set up a very complex machine, and the machine would decide everything and only react to customer needs, anticipate. This is everything is a journey in Husson. That's a beautiful thing, but the thing is, not everything is a journey. When we speak with our clients, they always start the conversation by saying, okay, when I look at my CRM, there is a fraction of it that I love. This is the automated sequence, the customer triggered sequence, the journeys, everything that is deeply automated, deeply personalized, deeply one-on-one. And there's the marketing I hate, which is a batch and blast, the newsletter that standing 3 days of a week, or maybe 7 days of a week, or maybe even twice a day. You actually see that still. And they always say, okay, the marketing I love is 10% of my messages. The marketing I hate is 90% of my messages. And they say, how can I go from 10% to 40, 50, 60? Or can I automate everything? And the thing is, you can't. There's a glass ceiling. The reason why you can't is because your job as a marketer is not to react to customers. Your marketing is paid to help with the business. And if you're doing batch and blast, it's because You have a category manager who says, talk about my new product. You have a boss who says, relate on revenue. You have a partner who says, talk about my product. And you need to do that. So if you go back to the tech, you realize that there is a mismatch between the marketing automation paradigm and the reality of CRM. So that's a very interesting situation where actually you need to bring in the next generation of tech to be able to articulate customer centricity and business centricity. So, you like multi-centric marketing.
Yep, that's a very good point. And I totally agree with this tension that is happening. Like you've got the pressure to deliver and, it's about selling more and introducing new products and having everyone saying, hey, this offerings matter. You need to push it kind of. And at the same time, it's how you find the right balance between what is automated and what is unique to marketing when it comes to this notion of empathy, of being human-centric, of understanding some of the social trends. And I think some of the tasks that can be automated, as you say, they work very seamlessly. These are tasks, mundane tasks that marketers no longer have to deal with, which, in theory should enable them to concentrate on what matters, on creativity, on collaboration, on strategic thinking, on entering adjacent markets. And I think the companies that do that are really at the forefront. They're ahead of the game. But as we've seen, it's a journey in the sense that, we've seen some of the challenges, like managing data quality is just, a big pain point. And before hiring a data scientist or thinking about, investing in more tech, you really need to think about, okay, what is the data that matters and how I'm going to leverage it and in the context we live in. So it's, yeah, I definitely agree. It's about finding the right balance between what makes us marketers and how tools can help. And these are only tools at the end of the day.
And the thing is, automation means two different things. And one thing is productivity. And it's obvious that you need to automate like the mundane task, the thing that you should not be done by humans. But it also means smarter decisioning. And in the mind of everybody, there was a confusion between the role of automation. What do you automate really? Do you automate like the templating? Okay, maybe, you don't need to rewrite your campaigns HTML from scratch every time you send a new campaign. This can be automated templating. But on the other end, and this is an actual quote from one of our clients who, she's a CMO of an apparel company, and I was asking her, are you worried about like AI taking over your job someday? And she said, no, of course no. AI will not be sitting at the executive committee every week when we decide what's the marketing plan for next week. And as you said, the right balance is probably to use automation to free some mental space for the decisions and inform the decisions with data insights. But at the end of the day, you have to be really pragmatic. You have to think about the business. You have to think about the different stakeholders. And it's the same thing with doctors. The AI will never speak to the patient. And the marketer has to evangelize what the data says about the customers and evangelize that to the rest of the organization. And this is actually a very deeply human job that is enabled by the data.
It is, and I'd argue it's also about the metrics you use, the measurement framework you have to showcase ROI. Because to your point, if you focus on sort of campaign after a campaign approach, and you look at the conversion rates, et cetera, you don't have this holistic perspective about, what is the quality of the experience that I have with this brand? And what is, at the end of the day, from a retention perspective, what is the CLV of this client, the customer lifetime value? And when I talk to clients, I'm always surprised by how few really truly leverage CLV or other more advanced metrics as a way to manage their businesses. And to Matt's point in the intro, it's increasingly more about retention, about turning clients and prospects into, and even employees, I would argue, into ambassadors. And less about, fueling more and more money into the acquisition machine and hoping that you're going to retain some clients. So it's really how you connect the dots between this quality of experiences that you're looking for So that's customer centricity and the business centric points that we've discussed in terms of being profitable and measuring the right metrics and thinking more about not what's the next best product or whether I'm increasing my conversion rates, but thinking about the next best experience, kind of.
Great. Great discussion. And I think that's a nice segue into our next topic, which is, David, you mentioned the 90-10 rule, which I think is really interesting, and a really nice discussion around the fact that it's good to hear that marketers aren't going to be replaced by AI. That's, I think, good news for everyone on this call. And really interesting discussion around sort of the balance between what can be automated and what still remains strategic. And also sort of how marketers can think about employing some of this in their own strategies. And I think it'd be great to hear a little bit around how some specific companies have actually addressed this in the industry. And I know there's a couple examples that come to mind. We can't name them outright, but they are examples and real use cases of brands executing a customer-centric strategy that delivers. So I think there's a major international hotel company and a perfume company as well that have done some interesting things as it relates to some of the strategic initiatives that we've been talking about. So David, would love to hear from you around kind of how these companies are actually executing in the real world on some of the things that you've been discussing.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. So it's good to talk about this large hospitality company. Tom is in the room, and we did a total economic impact study with Forrester on that specific case. So it's actually something that is, even though we don't have a name, the case study is public. It's a perfect example of what I was talking about the gap between the promise of marketing automation and the reality of marketing. So this hospitality company has already deployed marketing automation, and the thing everybody does, like the cart recovery sequence, the welcome sequence, whatever scenario you can think about, you can implement. But the thing is, the real life of the CRM team is to talk about the special offers from the different brands. So it's a multi-brand hospitality company. So you have luxury brands, super luxury brand, budget, you have spas, you have golf, you have resorts, you have cities, you have beaches, you have multi-countries, global. So it's actually a mess when you think about the marketing plan. The reality of that is you have thousands of stakeholders pushing thousands of offers and all wanting eyeballs, space, bandwidth. They want people to see their offer. So if you do a massive message with like 20 different offers, you know that everything that's below the fold is like page 2 on Google, nobody sees it. So they know it. So how do you solve the complexity of that marketing plan? Well, when you look at it, it's unsolvable using traditional techniques. It's purely political. So what they do with Tinyclues is to enable the CRM team to prioritize and dispatch the right content to the right person, not based on customer behavior, because you're talking about activating customers, but based on predicted likelihood to be interested by this or that offer. And when you do that, you create a framework for rationality, for value-driven thinking, and it makes it possible for a marketing team to actually evangelize the different stakeholders and make them accept that instead of having 100% of their customers, they will only speak to the right 5%, but this 5% may account maybe for 80% of the booking. So, it's actually good, it's the right 5%. And they get more chances because the bandwidth is split between everyone. So this is really the marketing of the future. It combines something very deeply data-driven with machine learning in it. It's very complex, but this is what is packaged within the Tinyclues solution, and a pragmatic, ever-changing marketing plan based on business needs.
Yeah, and we've, as David mentioned, Tinyclues commissioned us to evaluate the total economic impact of the solution and on this particular case. And what was really interesting, so total economic impact is an independent proprietary Forrester methodology to assess total cost, total benefits, and to ponderate this by the the likelihood of these, risks and costs and benefits to happen. And what we found out is that the one of the key benefits was the incremental profit due to increased volumes, because you were able to target specific audiences. Consumers were more likely to be interested by the offering, even for some niche offerings. And as David pointed out, there are so many different offerings and subtleties in the hospitality world. But it was also one way to optimize targeting, to not only increase conversion rates, but also to decrease disabandonment rates. So these are the main, I would say, benefits that we've quantified, and that explain why the solution was, clearly profitable. There are a couple of other benefits, like productivity gains. Let's bear in mind this particular company had a team of 15 campaign managers to deal with that. And so there are ways to automate processes and to, as I pointed out, streamline their daily jobs and enable them to focus on something else. So I believe you guys have the full case study and details that are in the public domain, anonymized, of course.
Yeah, the hardest thing in marketing is to find a good excuse to reach out to your customers. That's the number one problem. So when you think, you were saying, Tom, that marketing automation is super important. Yes, do as much as you can, but the automated reason why you reach out are always limited. Whereas when you combine that with what's happening right now, it opens the options. And one way to look at marketing AI is to think that it's basically a kind of sonar to identify a sweet spot where there is strong product market fit. Some people will be really interested into some offers, and there is no obvious criteria. Otherwise, that would be covered by marketing automation. So that's actually a good transition to the second example you were mentioning, Matt, a multi-brand perfume company. So when I was talking the first example of the hospitality company, it's more about handling the insanely complex marketing pressure and marketing plan. In this perfume company, it's one step beyond that, which is about enabling the CRM team to recommend new things to talk about that the category managers were not even aware of. And so here is a problem solved. Basically, the number one problem marketing teams have to solve is, these are the things we want to talk about next week, please send the campaigns. And this is targeting. But sometimes the question is, hey, we're late on revenue. We need to do something else. What do we do? So when you run out of ideas, can you find an extra message, an extra interesting thing to send to some extra customers? So we have a feature that we built about a year ago. It's called Efficiency Map. That's basically a map of where your revenue is coming from. So in this multi-brand perfume company, they like to break it down by brand. So you can say, okay, I have Chanel and Dior and whatever brand, all the brands of perfumes. And we identify that maybe this brand is a small brand. It's a niche brand. Maybe it's only 3% of your revenue. But what if this 3% is like 80% concentrated on 1% of your customers? That's a super high concentration. This 1% of your customers, they want this brand. And because this brand is small, you don't talk about it in your mainstream batch and blast newsletter. So if you find the right 1% and you send them the right message, you will reactivate them. They will be happy. This is customer-centric. You will drive revenue. You will create diversity. And you will improve your relationship with that brand, of course, when you're multi-brand. It's always a good thing to do. So this kind of data-driven ability for CRM to go to the other teams and say, hey, we have an idea. We have something to do. It's something completely new. We really want to push on these features and on these use cases because we really believe this is the nature of the transformation of the CMO's mission.
Great. Thank you so much, David. And I think like that just like really, really great examples of how actual brands have solved that challenge that we've been talking about, where through customer centricity, you actually can deliver on your business or for your business. They don't have to be mutually exclusive. It's just employing the right strategy. And I think those were some really interesting and specific tactics that a couple companies have used. And that actually brings us to near the end of our content today. I want to thank both you, David and Thomas, for joining today. Really great discussion. I think there's a lot in that marketers can take away and start thinking about right away as they're developing their strategies for the remainder of the year and facing some of the challenges that we've discussed while navigating these shifting landscape changes that we highlighted at the beginning. For those of you who are watching on social, I invite you to comment, to share. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe and like. If you have any questions about this or would like to find out more around what we're talking about today or have a discussion about it, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at Tinyclues. We'd love to hear from you. In conclusion, I think there's just one thing left that we kind of like to leave everybody in the audience with, and that's, gentlemen, if you have one piece of advice or sort of a prediction for the future that you'd like to leave the audience with as they're thinking about developing their strategies or even sort of developing their own career path, what would that be? I think, Thomas, let's start with you on this one.
If we take a step back and look beyond, the technology, I think it's the CMO's role and marketer's role is going to increasingly be about also engaging employees and giving them the tools they need to do their jobs, but also create a sense of belonging. So there's not one story for customers and clients and one other story for employees. This is the same story. And this is, I think, what's going to differentiate authentic brands from others. And I'm referring here to things around sustainability and things like that. I think this is what's going to matter moving forward. And so I'd predict CMOs will engage more employees moving forward. It's not just as chief people officer.
Great. Thank you, Thomas. David, what about you?
I think my prediction for the future is that time discounting will become absolutely critical. So, everything you're doing is long-term, no doubt. And everything is a journey. The true results will show up in a couple of years. But if you cannot build a path quarter after quarter of showing early results to create credibility and buy-in within your organization, it will never succeed. So I'm still seeing some organizations like making some crazy bets of investing on something that will not show anything before like 18 months. I believe this thing will disappear. And I highly recommend to only create plans that can show results quarter after quarter. Whatever you do, it's not true that technology requires more than one quarter to show some early results. Of course, not the full results, but you can always go step by step. Otherwise, it's too hard, no doubt.
Great. Thank you, David. Well, gentlemen, thank you once again for your time today. And thank you, everybody who took the time to tune in. I hope you found this valuable. I think there was a lot of great content today, and I'm looking forward to seeing some of this being executed in market and this gap between customer centricity and business goals being closed just a little bit more. Thank you again, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Tom.
Thanks for having me.